We are live, Prabhakar.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the second session on Citizen Science 2021. It's nice to have you all here. This particular session is actually focused on citizen science programs that are being conducted and oriented towards conservation. In this session, we have four interesting talks, four interesting presenters who've been running citizen science programs for actually conservation efforts. So they're all targeted at conservation. They address some issue of conservation directly through crowdsourcing and citizen science effort. Just one announcement. If you have any questions, if you want to engage with the audience, with the participants, ask your questions, pass a comment, give a comment, etc. Please use the Slack channel. We'll record them, we'll keep them there, and we'll post them to the speakers at the end of their talk. The first talk today is by Ameya Deshpande, and he's going to be talking about conservation of city wetlands through crowdsourcing study of odonates in Marathwada, Maharashtra. Ameya has completed his graduation in commerce, and after that he's been working in the field of environmental science, a person who's moved out of commerce into environmental science. He's always been fascinated and passionate towards nature and its elements. Right now, he's working on the Western Ghats Odonata project, focusing on the Odonata with MIT WPU, and simultaneously also doing his master's in ecology from the same university. Ameya, over to you.
Hello everyone, we will be talking today about conservation of city wetlands through crowd studying odonates in the Marathwada region. This project was funded by Grindmaster Machines Private Limited and routed through CARPE, which is based in Aurangabad. We will be primarily talking about the work that we conducted during this project and some of the insights that we got from this project. The urban freshwater ecosystems are under high anthropogenic pressures, and there requires to be an immediate action to be taken about these ecosystems. The most important thing is that the stakeholders should learn about their urban wetlands and the immense ecosystem services these urban wetlands provide to them. I think this is where there is a gap of awareness when it comes to stakeholders understanding their natural resources around them. And stakeholders are often unaware of the value of wetlands as such, but they can be made aware when they participate in data collection, also by creating environmental awareness and participatory management of the natural resources in their vicinity. So we thought that same method, same model can be applied in the case of Marathwada region, and we thought of a key taxa which dwells around wetlands, which is odonates or dragonflies and damselflies. So dragonflies and damselflies are these little but astonishing insects, which are often considered as ecological indicators, and they are also flagship species when it comes to wetland conservation. They are, though they are tiny, but they are very easy to observe, locate, and they are very easy to identify because of several field guides available now. So we chose dragonflies and damselflies as ecological indicators, as taxa that we can introduce people to, and which will eventually connect the people to the wetlands in their vicinity. Another aspect that we were looking at while we conducted this survey was to understand the knowledge gap in the Odonata surveys across Maharashtra. So as you can see, this was an old paper that we had come up with, and you can see that there is quite a lot of gap, especially when it comes to central Maharashtra, where there were very little points surveys conducted, and this is mainly the Marathwada region where you don't see many surveys conducted. So this was another motivation behind this project, why we came up with this project. Over to you, Amir.
Thank you very much, sir. So the objective of this project was to collect the baseline data of odonate diversity from 3 districts of Marathwada region. Also to spread awareness and initiate public participation in data collection. and to provide conservation recommendation to the forest department, municipal corporation and other authorities about the current status and future of urban wetlands. After doing pilot survey, we finalized 5 sites for regular monitoring where we collected data using transit methods, which can be seen in map A. We also did exploratory surveys at various permanent and temporary water bodies, which can be seen in map B. To initiate public participation, we collaborated with local NGO, schools, and colleges to conduct citizen science workshop and webinar, where participants were given hands-on training in data collection through citizen science app such as iNaturalist, where this data is used for future studies and research purpose. We also conducted workshop for the staff of Gautara Wildlife Sanctuary. It was quite an eye-opening for the staff because most of the time forest department tends to give more importance to mammals and birds, but very few of them have interest or knowledge about smaller fauna like insects. After conducting workshops successfully, we hope department will start working towards the conservation of insects such as butterflies and dragonflies, who are equally important in maintaining the balance of environment. So that was our objectives. Now I will hand over to Pankaj sir.
Thank you, Amaya. So I'll take it from here. So let's have a quick look at the results that we got during this project. So the very first result is about diversity and distribution of odonats of the Marathwada region. We recorded 46 species of odonats during our transit sampling, during our regular sampling. And so there were some species which were, I think, recorded for the first time from that area. Two locations, Harsul Lake and Dudna River, these two locations, they were highly diverse locations in terms of odonats. You can see some of the pictures from the study site, some of these dragonflies and damselflies from the study site. We also conducted multiple citizen science workshops and awareness drives. So through our collective effort of all our team and the audiences together, put together, we reached around 1043 participants through our citizen science workshops, 4 different webinars that we conducted, and 1 training session for the Uttara Wildlife Sanctuary staff. We also received a lot of entries. We basically did a small survey and we got 203 entries from the participants, and most of our audience was male dominated audience. So we had 135 males and 68 females, and a lot of them, 163 of total of 203, showed interest in being a part of the Marathwada Citizen Science Project, which we are aiming it to be a long-term citizen science project. Since we introduce our participants with citizen science portals such as iNaturalist, some of them have started using iNaturalist, and during the workshop and during this project duration, we got 39 observations which were shared on iNaturalist by the participants that were part of our workshops. As a part of the workshops, we also created this tiny handy field guide, which is a 2-fold leaflet, and this contains a lot of information about the odonate biology, as well as it provides photographs of 32 common species from the Marathwada region, and this is provided to all the participants, school kids, college students, as well as the forest department staff, so that they can carry this in their backpack, and whenever they encounter a dragonfly, they can simply open this up and identify it. So it provides a feeling of connectedness with these tiny insects. So all in all, we could, our data basically is the first time we are collected from the Marathwada region, and this is at a larger scale. So this partially would resolve the great knowledge gap of Central Maharashtra, which we had recognized. Based on our study, we have also come up with site-specific recommendations which are provided to the stakeholders. And we conducted the first ever citizen science camp on odontology in the Marathwada region, which had never been taken place in this drought-prone area. We also successfully included the regional youth in the research and outreach. So here are some news clippings and some photographs from the workshops. We have given site-specific recommendations. I think this I would just like to mention a few. So there were 4 different sites which we had regularly monitored and where we found that recommendations need to be provided. Harsul Lake, which was one of the most diverse location when it comes to odonata diversity, there's also a lot of tourism pressure on this particular lake. So perhaps this tourist activity need to be managed. Then there is Moti Lake, which is again under high anthropogenic pressure. There's a lot of garbage disposal happening into the lake, so that again has to be managed somewhere. Dudna River, which was the second most diverse location in our study, there we thought that more studies need to be conducted across the river, because there's more larger area which we can then survey properly. And the university campus, the Aurangabad University campus, where we found a very small stream, and we found a species such as Macromia cingulata over there, which is which is sort of an indicator of a relict ecosystem, which is still there in that around that stream. So overall, our recommendations have been to continue these exploratory surveys and biodiversity data documentation by researchers, as well as with the help of the overall citizen science scientists out there. And long-term monitoring of the rivers in the Marathwada region is urgently required, because it's a drought-prone area, and that's why I think any water source, identifying the features of that water source, identifying the fauna of that water source or the water resource, and conducting such long-term monitoring surveys is quite crucial. This is what we feel as a team. So in future, we are planning to collect more citizen science data through various grants. We are also seeking for funds specifically designed for the Marathwada region, where we can work towards conservation action. And we will be continuing our outreach through popular media and talks. So this is the team which participated in the data collection and project implementation. And Ameya is with me here. So other members are also, have been helping us through field work and data analysis. So that's all from our side. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you have any queries, you can get in touch with us. Our emails are provided here, and our website, lab website, is also provided here. So thank you once again. Thank you, Ameya. And I will now stop recording.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ameya. That was a very, very interesting talk. We have a whole set of questions that have come up. Thank you, Ameya, for this wonderful talk. Very, very nice, nice presentation. Let me just, there are a few questions. There are a whole set of questions.
Sure.
So I have a few questions to let me start the ball rolling. I have a few questions. Very interesting that you try to fill an information gap on odonates. Yeah. I've seen some very interesting studies of odonates being indicators of water quality, the quality of water in different areas. There's a big study in South Africa done by school children that monitor water quality and try to kind of relate it to the odonate diversity. Have you kind of looked at the water quality and odonate diversity? Is there some relationship between that, especially in one of the spots where you said the diversity is very high?
Yes. Actually, it was included in our project. So what we did was we collected the odonata data. At the same time, we also collected the water quality data at the simultaneous time, at frequent times. Whenever we used to go for the survey and transits, we used to also collect the water samples and collect the data of it also. And so ultimately, in our report, it is mentioned as what are the relations, how the diversity and how it changes if the water quality is different.
Very good. There is a question from one of the audience, Nishan, who's been asking, what were the children's reaction to your awareness program? How did they react? what age group were the children in, what was their participation levels, because it looks like these are all very structured transect surveys.
Yes. Actually, when we did the transit surveys, there were no as such students or others citizens were included. But we also did, when we did the exploratory surveys, those college students, school students were included in it, and it was eye-opening for them actually, because they haven't seen in this point or through this point of view. They didn't have that eye for dragonflies or other insects. So I would say that it was an eye-opening for all the students, and many of them were truly interested in and were keenly observing it, and had a lot of chat with us about understanding and how to identify them and all that stuff.
Very good. Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting talk. Please watch the Slack channel, Ameya, and if there are any questions there that are unanswered, please respond to that. Much appreciate your participation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Our next speaker today is Debanjana Dey. Unfortunately, the person is not able to come today to participate in the online question and answer session. But please post your question and answer session and questions in the Slack channel. He has assured me that he will answer them when he gets some time allocation. He has some emergency, has not been able to attend the talk. His talk today is on citizen science and decision making for conservation of livestock biodiversity in India. Livestock diversity is very, very high in India, and we know that there are traditional livestock herders who do transmigration across areas. So this study pertains to that. Debanjana is working as a Debanjana is working at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries. Presently, she is working on the question of how do we understand biodiversity and how convergence of science and policy can promote biodiversity conservation. She is very keen on presenting her work on how local knowledge systems has offered lessons for formal science in the conservation of livestock biodiversity. Over to you, Debanjana.
Hello, everyone. I am Debanjana, and I'll be presenting on citizen science and decision making for conservation of livestock biodiversity in India. We all know that there has been very little formal policy making for livestock biodiversity or biodiversity in general in the country. But there has been several scientific efforts to build biodiversity knowledge system by identifying and characterizing different species and breeds of flora and fauna. In this paper, I'll talk about livestock biodiversity and how recognition of the knowledge of the pastoral communities and citizens led to the recognition of lesser known livestock breeds in the country. Here, I'll present a case of the Maldari community in Banni grasslands of Gujarat. In this paper, I've used part of my PhD thesis and the data that was collected during the field work at the Banni grassland. So very briefly about the Banni grassland. Banni grassland is located in the northern part of the Kutch district of Gujarat, and it is one of the largest natural grasslands in Indian subcontinent and one of the finest grasslands in Asia. Banni has been home to diverse species of flora and fauna, and it has displayed a unique human nature relationship. The grasses in Banni, it varies from saline tolerant to tall trees, which are adapted to the Banni, to the specific conditions of the Banni. And Banni has been home to the Maldari pastoral community, and they have lived in Banni for more than 4 to 5 centuries. Their primary occupation is livestock rearing. And since Banni is a vast stretch of arid grassland which experiences recurrent drought spells and erratic rainfall, the variability of this region has also led to the development of some of the best livestock breeds in the region as well as in the country. So in this slide, I have presented some of the livestock breeds and the unique features that they possess. So not only these unique features, all these breeds, be it Concrete cattle or the Banni buffalo or Kachi horse or Kharai camel, all of these breeds, they share certain unique characters, certain characters of adaptability, like their ability to survive in water stressed condition, to cover long distances during drought spells, to resist to diseases, etc. So this unique characters or this character adaptive traits of these breeds have developed over the years, and these are due to the rich knowledge system of the Maldari pastoral communities. So they have developed breeding protocols to maintain the pure gene lines of these breeds. So their protocols were mainly guided by the values that led to the selection of criteria, such as ability to survive on minimum fodder, or ability to walk long distances, graze in the field on their own, living a disease-free life, motherly instinct, etc. So apart from this, the co-evolution of the biodiversity of the region, along with the biophysical uniqueness of the grassland, which has supported the pastoral system for centuries, and the communities who have coexisted in this ecosystem for several centuries and several generations, have developed certain measures, management practices for the conservation of the grassland, and they have developed these skills through long-term ecological understanding and learning and living through the crises. So the communities, they know not to overgraze the grassland. They have their mechanism, they have their grazing routes, they have their value system, how to breed the grassland, how to breed the livestock, how to graze them so that the grassland is not overgrazed. So all of these have led to not only generation of some of the best livestock breed, but also conservation of the ecosystem so that the breeds can thrive. And one of its aspect was registration of Banni buffalo, which led to the recognition of the breed that they have reared for over the years, and which have developed through evolution and in the unique environment of Banni. So this process began with active involvement of civil society organization and scientists from NBAGR. Civil society organization that was involved was Sajivan, which is a Bhuj-based civil society organization, and has been a key agent to empower the local communities, to connect them to the decision makers. So Sajivan, along with the Vodka Paryatan Samiti, for the first time, they took initiative to organize a Pashu Mela, cattle fair in Banni in 2008. And this was initiated to assist the livestock breeders to establish a market for animal trade at a local level. And this also led to organize the Maldaris to congregate for the recognition of their livestock breeds. The Pashu Mela was the step which led to the initiation of the process for the formation of Breeders Association. It was an effort which all the Maldaris came together and they formed this association, and it was then registered as a society in 2009. And the community then, they also developed the biocultural community protocol, which puts into record the various values of the pastoral community, and it also reflects the role that the community has, or how they have managed the livestock breeds and the biodiversity in the region. So they developed this biocultural community protocol to secure their rights and their stewardship over Banni. So this also led them to file the application for registration of Banni buffalo. And this drove the scientists from NBAGR to scientifically study the breed, their genotypic and phenotypic characteristics, and to determine whether it was a unique breed or not. And after due examination, the genotypic confirmed that the Banni buffalo was a unique breed and a distinct breed, and it was registered in 2010. And it was the first breed to be registered after independence, and the 11th breed of buffalo that was registered. So this successful attempt of registration of the Banni breed was acknowledged by NBAGR, and a similar process was directed to be emulated by other states for registration of their breeds. And this methodology was standardized by NBAGR for the registration of a breed in the country. Since since then, several lesser-known breeds have received similar recognition from different states of the country. So the process involves application to be filed by a citizen of India or a breed society or a NGO or government agencies, and they have to provide supportive documents or scientific evidence for their uniqueness. And then the Bureau estimates the various traits, their physical traits, the biometry, their location, the socioeconomic status of the farmer who rear the breed. And after due analysis, the final decision is being taken by the Breed Registration Committee of the ICAR, Indian Council of Agriculture and Research. So the various livestock breeds that have been registered are mentioned in this figure. So this process not only led to the recognition of the breed, but also enabled the pastoral communities to avail several government schemes so as to further their conservation measures, and also to and also led the wider community to know about their unique breeds. So in this case of Banni, what do we see that it was the CSO along with the scientists from NBAGR who came together. They took initiative to listen to the citizen, that is the pastoral community here, and they listen to their knowledge system so that they can be validated with scientific underpinning. So we can conclude that both science and policy can learn from and with the informal local knowledge system. And since conservation of biodiversity is not only about the conservation of breed, it requires the wider ecosystem conservation within which the breed is located. So this pastoral communities or any indigenous communities and their knowledge system, they know how a breed has evolved, how a biodiversity is, how a breed thrives in a particular ecosystem or an agroecological region of the country. So including their knowledge, including them in the decision making, can only further the objectives of conservation of biodiversity. And this can be facilitated by consultation and open dialogue among all the stakeholders for any decisions that is to be made. So I'll stop here. I'll be happy to take any questions and inquiries. Thank you.
You're muted, Prabhakar.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a very interesting talk. And unfortunately, she is not here to take our questions and answer them directly. But looks like it's pioneering work in bringing on the Maldhari's traditional knowledge into mainstream science and breed recognition. If you have any questions, just post it on the Slack channel, and I'm sure she'll be responding to them when she gets when she has the time with all her responses to your questions. Okay, our next talk today is by Arjun Kamdar, the complex of cryptic species complexes. adapting to a changing landscape in citizen science. Arjun has been the editor of the Reptiles and Amphibians of India Forum and is helping with participation, cataloging, data, and branding. He is also working with Vanvadi, a forest collective in Maharashtra, to document the biodiversity in the regenerating sites. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting some of our work from the Reptiles of India Citizen Science Portal and seek feedback from you all on the path forward. So this is going to be a short presentation with more time towards the end. So the Reptiles of India is a website dedicated to the 600 odd species of reptiles in the subcontinent. And everyone can contribute. All you need to do is submit an image, add the details of where it was seen, and if there are any other bits that you deem relevant. This is then reviewed and entered into the system to create a database of images like these. This is with, in addition, we have other information like the conservation status of the species, its habits, etc. Observation generated distribution maps are also created for each species. There are two broad goals of this portal. The first is to uncover ecological patterns and processes, and the other is to pique the interest of lay people with regard to reptiles and wildlife science. Now, so far, for both our goals, we, as several other citizen science initiatives across the globe, have relied on identifying the specimen to the species level. That is, the taxon unit has been the species, and the observation needs to be identified to this level in order to achieve the goals of the project, which we shall delve into ahead as well. And at ROI 2, the participants also attempt to identify the species or get it identified on the platform. However, since the past few years, taxonomic and biogeographic studies in the subcontinent have increased at a phenomenal rate, and some brilliant work is being done in India that is uncovering cryptic species, which means species that cannot be identified via visual observations alone. These species either need to be caught and a scale count needs to be done, particularly for the snakes and the lizards, or very often be analyzed in a lab. That is, their skull morphology needs to be looked at, or their genetics need to be looked at. For instance, this means that species that were considered once a widespread species, such as the common wine snake, what was known as the common wine snake, Ahitula nasuta, but is now divided into several different species. For instance, here, the wine snake was studied and was found to be not just one species, but several different species, which are visually very similar, and some of them are nearly overlapping in their range, as we can see in the map here. Now, this changing landscape is great for Indian herpetology, where we're learning more about the species and their history, about how they came to be where they are, and of course, it has conservation implications as well. However, this throws up a very interesting challenge. This new landscape throws up an interesting challenge because we can no longer identify species to, just simply by looking at them the way we used to. And this often leads to citizen scientists either not collecting data at all, or collecting incorrect data. Also, just the distribution, that is the range of these new species, is not enough, or not rigorous or robust enough rather, to identify which species it is. To give you a little bit more perspective, for the birders here, a birder's equivalent would be, just imagine that a good number of the birds that are out there are pipits, and which are really notoriously difficult to identify, and their definitions, that is their species delineations, are also changing. So it's very difficult, particularly for citizen science, to keep track, because this information is not readily accessible to them, and when it is in very heavy academic papers, which are, of course, extremely difficult for citizen science to go through. Therefore, we need a new way to look at this. We have two potential paths that we've thought of. One is the use of morphotypes, which is basically using simply the visible morphology of the specimen. And they do this for invertebrate surveys. Scientists are known to use this for invertebrate surveys, where it is notoriously difficult to identify the species, the specimen to the species. So they have devised a method on where when they're serving a place, if they find four different species or four different looking um, looking, say, beetles, or here in this case, let's say these geckos here, which are four different species but look very similar, they would just be given tags such as C1, C2, C3, and C4. And um, all the individuals that are caught that look most similar to C1 would be clubbed under that. This is helpful when we're just trying to get an idea of the diversity of a particular plot. But this, of course, cannot be scaled up because there will be no congruence between um, herpetologist one here in X place and herpetologist Y, herpetologist two in Y place. So this we don't think that this could be used as a scalable model to help us navigate this new changing landscape. Another thought we were considering is to place a greater emphasis on natural history observations, such as not only which species it was or what genera the animal was of, but also what the animal was doing and where it was seen. This is, of course, in addition to identifying it to the nearest taxonomic place possible. Where possible, it would be great if it could be identified up to the species, but where not, at least to the genera, and see where this is from. Now, this would help us in two ways, because this would help us answer ecological questions as well, which are more natural history oriented, as well as serve as a tool for nature education. Now, to take a step back, the state of India's birds, which is something that I think most of us here would be familiar with, which is a brilliant document which has been put together from when data from eBird over several years was analyzed. And these were again observations collected by individual bird enthusiasts. And if this would be putting together something like this would be quite a challenge if we could identify the specimen only up to, let's say, the genus level. We wouldn't be able to put together a document of this nature. This is very similar to what we're facing right now in Indian herpetology. And this is, of course, not restricted only to reptiles, but also to amphibians, which is also undergoing taxonomic changes at a very rapid pace, including the description of several cryptic species. So this is where we need your help. We're also planning on updating the site and figuring out how to go ahead. And therefore, we thought that there are a few questions that we thought is best answered by the wider citizen science community. And therefore, we put these together. I'll leave this slide here for a few seconds. Please take a screenshot of this and let's have a discussion on how you think we can go forward. Because I think it's best that we preemptively plan this changing landscape before we realize that it's a bit too late to understand how to navigate this challenge. We can discuss this on the Slack channel as well if we don't have time during the Zoom bit. Thank you, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you very much, Arjun, for that very interesting presentation. Let me start the question ball rolling. There were two things that you mentioned. One was natural history notes for the identification of species and morphology for the identification of species. Can you qualify, can you give some more flavor to that? I mean, how much does the natural history help? Have you found it very helpful, saying if somebody gives some behavioral notes, you're able to identify species better? Or morphology, does it, what kind of mistakes are possible, etc.?
Right. So I think firstly, I should have been more clear there, where I am not proposing these two methods to help us identify the species, but rather to move away from simply identifying species. Many of these species, particularly with amphibians and also with reptiles these days, it's incredibly difficult to do so because many of them are what we call DNA barcoded species. So their specimen need to be analyzed in a lab. So these two ideas were to move away from simply identifying species. So that's why we thought of these two ways. And to answer the question, I think the morphotypes was something that several scientists use when they are identifying very difficult to identify species, particularly invertebrate scientists, where there are just so many species. So they say, okay, we've got maybe 100 specimen of that. 20 look very similar to each other. So that's one cluster, and we'll call that, let's say, morphotype 1, and so on, so that you can at least get an idea of diversity. So that was one way, but of course, as I mentioned in the talk, I don't think that that's scalable. And the other idea was natural history observations. So here, rather than simply relying on diversity and density, we'll say we can, still pique the curiosity of people by engaging them to spend some time with the animal that they're observing. So still kind of forge that connection with the natural world. So that's the proposal. And of course, this helps. For example, when a few friends and I were recently in the Andamans, we saw a young yellow-lipped sea crate being predated upon by a crab. So this is again interesting. And of course, on the portal as well, we've got observations of snakes eating things that they hadn't previously been known to eat, or other animals preying on snakes, or being found in highly dense urban areas. So that's also something that we can look at.
Very good, thank you. There's one question from Nishant Venugopal. He says, great way to record, but how much do you think Reptiles of India are associated with social media? Do you have a lot of social media campaigns going on?
No, we don't really. So this is all on a voluntary basis. So no one's really been able, and nobody in our team of volunteers has, the social media expertise. But we're looking at working towards that as well. So we're going to revamp the website right now and the entire portal, and that's particularly the reason, when we can incorporate a lot of these. So in addition to social media, we're coming up with a new vertical, which is going to be your project. So citizen scientists can create their own project for their local area, and that way, connect with other citizen scientists who share a similar passion. So that's supposed to be coupled and, supposed to augment the social media aspect as well.
Wow, very
to take it not only online but also offline and create real communities.
Wow, very good. Thank you very much. Best wishes. Look forward to your new website when it's out and running.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Our last talk today is by Anandarup Bhadra. Spread the word, bird by bird. That's his title. Anandarup is an assistant teacher at an RFP school in West Bengal. He works in the school. He's interested in community-driven conservation projects. Through the dog lab at ICER, Kolkata, he has generated survey data for research on Indian free-ranging dogs. He has also been involved with School of Birds and helps spread awareness to drive conservation through bird watching. Over to you, Anandarup.
Hello everyone. Hi, I'm Anandarup. I'm a teacher and an educator. Today I'll talk about a project we've been doing on awareness and conservation using bird watching as a tool. I work with an organization called School of Birds, and Titash Chakraborty from the same organization is my co-author in this project. So to give an overview of what we're doing, our long-term goal is wildlife conservation through education and awareness, and we aim to change local practices which are detrimental to the ecosystem. We also want to document local knowledge to help advance scientific understanding. Besides all of this, we want to see the impact of the lockdown due to COVID-19 on wildlife, specifically on tourism, to promote sustainable tourism in the future. Our project site is Shushunia Hill and its surrounding areas in Bankura district of West Bengal. It is one of the northernmost outcrops of the Eastern Ghats, and this highland was formed 500 million years ago and has been weathered to its current state over the millennia. The history and culture in this region is old. It has been inhabited by several tribes, including the Santals and the Baudis. There is still an annual festival held on the Shushunia Hill, participated in by the Santal folk of the region. And locally, the culture of hunting and trapping is still prevalent. Most land carnivores are extinct locally because they have been driven from the land by lack of resources and also directly because of hunting. This is also a popular tourist destination and every year attracts thousands of people to this region. School of Birds, as I said, as an organization, we promote bird watching and through it we try to inculcate conservation as a way of life. Our activities in this area began since March 2016. It was initially small sessions of documentaries on nature and maybe small field trips, but very quickly we grew to form a course on the life of birds. And as we developed by December 2020, there had been children from preschool to high school who had been in the project for about 4 years, and they became the founding members of the Shushunia Bird Club. Armed with binoculars and field manuals, these children are now participating in actual data collection, and we also record their understanding and their anecdotes about wildlife through in-person sessions. The purpose of the Shushunia Bird Club is to collect local anecdotes about wildlife besides actually going to the field and making systematic observations. Uh, we use eBird for this because it is a repository of crowdsourced bird observations and it is also a very good tool to record field data. We also provide hand-holding support to ensure permanent change in attitude and behavior through WhatsApp groups. We currently have 14 members ranging from middle schoolers to college students. These children have several strengths as citizen scientists. They live in a very diverse habitat. In the village and the surrounding area, we might find button quails or vertical flycatchers, which is a migrant from Himalayas. And in the woodlands, we might find spotted owlets or scops owl. And the foothills are densely populated by small minivets and bee eaters. So due to this regular interaction with wildlife, these children are very familiar with them and their culture is steeped with anecdotes about local wildlife, and they're also excellent spotters. Knowing the difference between moving foliage or a shadow in a split second and knowing with certainty that this was definitely some animal is a skill that we have to learn. But these children grow up with these skills, although it is derived from their tradition of trapping and hunting. If we can use these skills for a more positive engagement, then these children can grow up to be conservationists. So now let's look at some of the outcomes of the work that we're doing. eBird has 692 checklists on Bakura with 155 observers and 321 species currently recorded. 23 hotspots have been identified, and Shushunia Hill is the fifth in that list of hotspots with 93 species and 13 checklists by 13 people. So clearly there are plenty of birders in West Bengal, but not a lot of them are operating in this region. Ever since School of Birds started making systematic observations, we have generated 6 checklists with 52 species being identified. Cumulative transect length of almost 11 kilometers have been covered in about 10 hours, slightly more than 10 hours. We also selected a trail near Shilalipi in Shushunia, which is a historical landmark, and it attracts a lot of tourists. But because it is adjacent to the historical landmark, it is not as densely populated by tourists. So field observations are easier during the peak season of tourism even. At this site, we currently have 2 object lists with 22 species and over 5 kilometers of transect length covered in around 5 hours. Using this particular spot, we hope to see the effect of lockdown due to pandemic on tourism. Since March 2020, most tourism has stopped. Only local people visit this area. And as a result, when we made our observations at the end of December and at the end of January, there were very few people in the area, and we got channel liner index of diversity of around 1.8 to 2.2 for the 2 observations. And lower this number, the more diverse the habitat. We hope that in the future we'll get more data at a time when tourism is back to its pre-pandemic state, and we can then compare effect on diversity, richness, and abundance to see how the lockdown can change the distribution of wildlife. While conducting the in-person sessions, we get to hear a lot of anecdotes about wildlife from the students. And using these anecdotes, we can piece together a timeline of extinctions which have happened locally. So tigers are known to have been extinct from this region for a long time. And we heard a story about a woman who came to this region sometime around independence. During her travel from Chhattisgarh to Shushunia, she had to be very careful about where she was going because there were plenty of places where tigers were known to hunt. And she even said that before she had come to Shushunia, before her time, there was one particular tiger which attacked a series of people. It was eventually caught, killed, and strung up on one of the local trees. So maybe 20 to 25 years before she arrived in Shushunia, there were tigers in the region. That puts the time of extinction to around 1920s locally. Striped hyenas are also currently extinct from the region. So the children themselves have not seen striped hyenas, but their parents and guardians have seen striped hyenas in their view, which would mean that they have been absent from the region since around the 1990s, even though they are present in the neighboring district of Purulia. So we have also seen a change in the attitude of the students towards wildlife. They are now actively interested in bird watching. They actively prevent trapping, and they call us in distress when someone is directly seen by them engaged in that. Finally, they are clearly abstaining from hunting. So all these changes in attitudes and behavior are only possible if some sort of empathic connection is developed with the local wildlife, which is only possible through understanding the wildlife. So our future plans include generating a more comprehensive timeline for local extinctions using anecdotes provided by the club members. And we intend to continue systematic and seasonal data collection so that post-pandemic we can compare the data we generate now with the data at full swing of tourism to see the impact tourism has on the wildlife of the region. Finally, we would also like to encourage more and more students to join this club so that they can get interested in bird watching and over time protect the trails around Shushunia so that it becomes better known as a birding hotspot and attracts nature loving tourists, and in the long run it promotes ecotourism in the region. So thank you. I'm grateful to Citizen Science for providing me with this platform, and please feel free to get in touch with us.
Thank you very much for this very, very nice talk. There are a few questions in the Slack stream. One of the questions one of them asks is, you seem to be collecting these anecdotes and from various people and trying to build an extinction timeline, things like that. Are they published anywhere? One of the persons are asking, are you publishing them? Have you published them anywhere?
Right. So currently, because of lockdowns, we cannot go there right now. Right now, we are trying to engage the students in discussion so that they are comfortable in sharing their knowledge. And what we want them to do is gather data themselves from people around them by talking to them and finding out if they have seen certain animals or when they have seen certain animals. Eventually, we'll be able to pool that together into a substantial set so that it is publishable. Right now, it's not there.
I have one very inquisitive question. These children, what is their view when they see sites like eBird? Do they actually participate in it and put in data and things like that? what do they think is going on? Because these are all rural children in,
Right.
what
So
will be
the
their
thing
view
is,
on?
so very recently, because of the lockdowns, there have been studies on how many children have access to internet at all in the rural Bengal. So that number is somewhere around 10% of children if it's rural settings. And in this village, we don't know about the all the children that are there, but for the club, we do know that there are 3 children who have smartphones. And they have recently got them. The third one is very new. And so one of the things we want them to do is engage with apps which are useful for more than say social media presence, you know. So rather than WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter, we want them to be engaged in say eBird or iNaturalist, because for them all of these are equally new and they are going to learn pretty quickly. So during the field trips, we have been logging data ourselves into the eBird, but we have taken pen and paper and they have noted down the numbers that they are seeing. At the end of the transact, we have collected all of the data and collated it into eBird. So right now they have not themselves entered any data, but they are going to. They are interested.
There are 3 quick questions. If you can answer them precisely, it will be very good. Shortly, it will be very good because they're interesting questions. One of them is by Sai, who says, why do you think the diversity declined with reduced tourism? Sorry if you, did you say diversity declined with reduced tourism? Why?
I said the diversity seems to be around 2.2 to 1.8. Lower that number, higher is the diversity. So this number can range from 0 to 4.6. So this seems to be a baseline from which we can compare. Because there isn't a baseline, we cannot compare, and it can only be used as a comparative tool. So eventually, when we get full swing of tourism and we get data, then compare what the index says.
So you haven't concluded that with tourism there is a change in diversity, right?
We expect that the diversity would be higher because there is less disturbance.
Okay. So the second question is by Paul Paugh. Any data on the percentage reduction of hunting and trapping demography-wise which prove
again,
or indicate that younger generations are trapping, hunting less?
Right. So our data is again anecdotal. So we know from the students who are in the group, and they call us with their personal observations that someone is hunting or someone is trapping, and then they'll go and prevent that act.
Okay.
So we know that they are doing it, but we don't have exact data.
So the last question is by Geeta Ramswamy. How are you documenting the attitude change among children? Is it anecdotal only, or are there quantitative assessments involved? Do you make any quantitative assessments for attitudinal changes?
We have not quantified it like that, but see, this whole program was designed to understand their attitude for ourselves as individuals, to go there and find out what they think of the wildlife around them. We find out that they're very knowledgeable of the species that are present there, and we eventually realized that this could be done, that they could act as data generators in eBird. So we have not really gone with a prepared protocol to go and establish the changes we have seen over time. Eventually, it might be possible. As of now, we do not have plans of quantifying it.
Good. Good. All the best. Look forward to your study and further work in the next SI and further on.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this session. 4 very, very interesting talks of people who've been working in the field, engaging with citizens, oriented towards conservation. I'll leave it to you all to reflect on this. Over to you, Akshita, for the next program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Prabhakar. We will be back shortly in the evening today at 6:30 p.m. With Lisa Rasmussen's talk. So please join us on the hashtag Day 1 13 September Lisa channel at 6:30. See you all there, and thank you so much for your participation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.